My husband gave me a $10,000 wedding dress as a present, but my envious mother-in-law burnt it down on our wedding day. My husband bravely extinguished the fire and rescued me as I collapsed to the floor in astonishment. However, what followed? I had a plan for the ultimate vengeance and surprised her with it. The day I met Lucas is etched in my memory. It was as if time stood still and I could just make out his features. The 28-year-old professional baseball player, Lucas Stone, was towering over everyone he met and possessed an infectious smile that could brighten any space. His attractiveness wasn't the only thing I liked about him, though. It was his treatment of me. Lucas was the most kind and nicest person I'd ever met. He also made me feel unique. At the age of 27, I was employed in New York City as an administrative assistant. Prior to that moment, my life had been very typical. I was never the kind to draw attention to myself, and I certainly didn't possess any particularly noteworthy abilities. There was still a void in my life, despite my stable employment, supportive friends, and loving family. Luz was that something. At a friend's party, we crossed paths. While I was accompanied by a couple of coworkers, he was there with a large bunch of his baseball teammates. I could tell we were meant to be together the second we began chatting. Among our many shared interests were a love of exploration and adventure, as well as, oddly enough, a commitment to upholding traditional family values. To top it all off, he embodied every quality I sought in a partner. We grew close and couldn't be apart. We discussed our future together as our relationship flourished. Never before had I experienced such profound feelings of love and devotion in a romantic partnership. Lucas treated me like I was his only lady, and we began discussing marriage shortly after. The day we would exchange wedding vows was an absolute dream come true for me. Nothing could possibly go wrong, since he was all I could have asked for. However, it's inevitable that there will be difficulties in any partnership. It was Carol, his mother, and not us, who caused the first major issue. I was aware of her since Lucas had brought her up previously. Yet, he consistently treated her with the utmost respect, despite the slight tightness in his voice whenever he did so. Even yet, prior to our first face-to-face encounter, I knew very little about her. Despite being in her early 50s, Carol Stone exhibited an air of authority. Her features were keen, her hair was always immaculately done, and her disposition was icy. Upon first encountering her, an unsettling shiver went down my spine. She wasn't outright impolite, but there was an air of cold judgment around her. Her lack of friendliness irritated me. "I'm glad you could finally meet my mother," Lucas began, attempting to break the awkward silence that had settled between us during our lunch hour together. Nevertheless, Carol hardly met my gaze as she said, "Nice to meet you." Her voice lacked emotion, and we barely exchanged looks for a few seconds. There was an air of unease that I could sense, but Lucas was quick to reassure me. "Stop fretting over her. She's being overly cautious, that's all." I wish I could trust him, but I just couldn't get Carol's aura to go away. Lucas gave me a wedding dress as a lavish present a few weeks following that uncomfortable meeting. This bridal gown, however, was not your average gown. In fact, it was worth $10,000. A beautiful robe that glistened as the wearer walked. When he handed it to me, I was overjoyed. I was delighted not only by the cost, but also by the care that went into its creation. He saw that I wanted to wear the most exquisite dress to my wedding and worked tirelessly to make my fantasy a reality. My enthusiasm for the outfit was overwhelming the second it caught my eye. "Oh my gosh, Lucas, this is amazing." My hands quivered as I ran them over the fragile cloth, and I let out a cry. "I can't believe you did this for me." He grinned heartily. "Jennifer, you are deserving of it. I hope that our wedding is just ideal for you." I had no idea the outfit would represent so much more than simply our love for each other. The air was thick with tension the moment Carol heard about the outfit. Her reaction was different from my expectations. When she learned how much Lucas had spent on it, her face went icy, which was unexpected because I thought she would be thrilled for us. "That dress is over the top, Lucas," she remarked with a severe tone of voice. "You don't need to spoil her with such extravagant things." My mind was blown. In Koimi, that was an entirely new perspective on the dress for me. It was more about making me feel cherished and unique than about indulging me. That wasn't how Carol saw it, though. To the contrary, Lucas remained steadfast. "I am indifferent, mother. Jennifer should be rewarded." My heart swells with love for my fiancé. I am fully committed to this decision. I could feel the temperature dropping between us as Carol's disapproval became more apparent. There was a noticeable increase in tension, and I didn't want to sow discord. Why would Carol seem so furious over a garment that was supposed to bring me joy? I couldn't help but wonder. Next came the big day, the wedding. Everyone was staring at me as I entered the site in my bridal gown, which cost $10,000. I felt an overwhelming sense of pride as the guests marveled at my beauty. With Lucas at my side, I was about to embark on a new chapter in our lives. I told everyone who came up to congratulate me how considerate Lucas had been. "He gave me this stunning dress," I exclaimed, my face lighting up with joy. Everybody was so effusive in their praise that I felt like the luckiest woman alive. Just when I thought things was going swimmingly, Carol walked up to me, her face betraying her emotions. Encircled by her warm embrace, she softly murmured, "Your time is over now." I was taken aback for a split second, trying to make sense of what she was saying, but time was of the essence. Out of nowhere, a peculiar warmth washed over me. Before I could blink, my bridal dress was engulfed in flames. In the midst of the screams, I spun around to find Carol standing there, a smile plastered across her face as she held a cigarette lighter. As I came to terms with what had transpired, my heart began to accelerate. I sent an anxious glance in the direction of Lucas, who stood distantly with his companions. His astonishment was palpable as he ran toward me, battling his way through the oncoming onlookers. The top half of my clothing was swiftly engulfed in flames. Just in the nick of time, Lucas came racing over and fearlessly began dousing the flames. I could feel the scorching heat through the garment and onto my flesh. I refrained from visiting the hospital despite the fact that I sustained minor burns to my arms. "I'm fine, Lucas, really," I tried to reassure him. But deep down, I was shocked. Just what had transpired? Carol accomplished something so heinous. How could she? Following then, the wedding became a haze. The sense of betrayal persisted even after I changed into a more ordinary clothing. Something wasn't right, but I didn't know what it was. On our way home that night, I overheard Lucas having a chat with his mom. Carol was enraged at Lucas, and her remarks pierced me deeply. Concerns of the dress igniting were unimportant to her. She was furious because he had extinguished the fire when it had started. Screaming at Lucas, Carol said, "I didn't want to see that expensive dress on her. Why did you give her something so extravagant?" The depth of Carol's jealousy became crystal clear to me at that very moment. I had been so blinded by love that I didn't see it sooner. Now I understood the real reason for her coldness. She didn't want me to be the center of attention. She didn't want Lucas to love me more than her. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't let her control our lives. Despite his love for me, Lucas seemed to be caught in her web. I had to get away from it all. That's how my journey of revenge and self-empowerment began. But it wouldn't be easy. It was only just beginning. The days after the wedding were a blur. I was still trying to process what had happened. The flames, the dress, and Carol's cold words haunted me. I couldn't understand how someone who was supposed to be family could hurt me like that. But Lucas, he seemed so unfazed by it all. He brushed it off like it was nothing, and honestly, I didn't know how to feel about that. After the wedding incident, things between Lucas and me started to change. There was an unspoken tension hanging over us. We tried to go back to normal, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I had burns on my arms, but they were nothing compared to the emotional scars Carol had left. Lucas tried to be supportive, but it felt like I was the one doing all the emotional labor in our relationship. I remember one evening, about a week after the wedding, when Lucas and I were sitting on the couch. I could tell he was uncomfortable, his eyes flicking nervously between me and his phone. Finally, he spoke up. "Jennifer, we need to talk about something." My heart skipped a beat. I could already guess what it was. "Carol, what's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been thinking a lot about my mom and the way she's been acting," Lucas said, looking down at his hands. "I know she's upset about the dress, and I just want you to understand she's not used to sharing me with anyone. I think it's hard for her." I stared at him, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. Was he seriously defending her behavior? Was he so blind that he couldn't see how toxic his mother was? "Lucas, it's not just about the dress," I said, my voice trembling. "It's about everything. The way she treated me, the way she made me feel worthless. That's not normal." He looked at me, his eyes softening. I know, and I'm sorry. I really am, but she's my mom. I can't just cut her off like that." "Why not?" I asked, frustrated. "She's been controlling you your whole life, and now she's trying to control our relationship. Why are you so scared of her?" Lucas flinched at my words. "I'm not scared, Jennifer. But she's been there for me my whole life. She's my family." I felt the tears welling up in my eyes. "And I'm supposed to just accept that. I'm supposed to accept her mistreatment of me because she's your family." He fell silent. I knew he was trying to understand, but it wasn't enough. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear. I was losing him. I was losing him to a woman who wasn't even willing to respect me as his partner. The next day, I overheard another conversation. This time, I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. It just happened. I was walking through the house when I heard Lucas and his mother talking in the living room. Carol's voice was sharp, her tone angry. "You really let her get to you, didn't you?" Carol spat. "You let her ruin everything. That dress, that wedding, she doesn't belong in our family. She's just a distraction." I froze. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like a slap to the face. Carol was so jealous of me, so bitter, that she couldn't stand seeing me with her son. And Lucas, he didn't say a word. He didn't defend me. He didn't stand up for me. "Mom, please," Lucas's voice was strained. "Stop. I'm trying to make this work. I love Jennifer, and I love you, but you've always been my priority." Carol said coldly, "If you really think she's the one for you, then why did you give her such an expensive dress? Why would you spoil her like that?" I felt a wave of anger rush through me, and I couldn't help it. I had to speak up. I walked into the living room, my face flushed with emotion. "Why do you care so much about a dress?" I demanded, my voice trembling with frustration. "Why does it bother you that Lucas loves me? Why do you want to ruin everything between us?" Carol turned to look at me, her expression a mixture of annoyance and disdain. "Because you're a distraction, Jennifer. A beautiful, expensive distraction. But you'll never be part of this family, not really." I couldn't believe my ears. How could she say that to me? How could she just dismiss me like I was nothing? "Lucas, we need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not." But Lucas just looked at me, his face torn. "Jennifer, please, I'm trying. You understand. This is hard for me." I didn't want to hear it anymore. I couldn't stand it. I needed to get away from all of this. I needed to clear my head. I went to my parents' house that night, feeling like everything was falling apart. I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. It wasn't just Carol anymore. It was Lucas too. I was beginning to realize that I could never be happy with someone who couldn't stand up for me. I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own relationship. That's when I made up my mind. I couldn't live this way anymore. I had to get away from Carol, from Lucas, and from all the manipulation and control. I decided that I needed a divorce. But there was something more, something I had to do for myself. I couldn't just walk away without confronting the truth about what Carol had done. I would fight back. I would take action. I couldn't let Carol get away with what she had done to me. It wasn't easy. The decision to divorce Lucas felt like a weight had been lifted, but at the same time, it was terrifying. I loved him. I truly did. But I had to face the truth. Carol wasn't just controlling, she was toxic. She had no respect for me, and no matter how much Lucas claimed to love me, he was always going to choose her over me. The way he couldn't stand up to her, the way he let her tear us apart, it was something I couldn't ignore any longer. I spent the next few days at my parents' house, trying to sort through everything. I felt like I was in a fog. I couldn't stop thinking about the wedding, about the fire, about Carol's cold, calculating words. I could still hear them in my mind, and every time I replayed the incident, my heart sank all over again. But then, as I lay in bed one night, an idea began to form. I had to get proof. I needed something solid to show Lucas, something undeniable, something that would force him to see who his mother really was. The next morning, I dug out my phone and started going through the footage from the wedding. I had recorded everything, thinking it would be a sweet memory for us to look back on. But now, I wasn't sure if I would ever want to look at those moments the same way again. As I skimmed through the video, my stomach turned. And then I saw it. Right at the moment when Carol hugged me, when she whispered those chilling words in my ear, I saw her hand move toward her pocket, pulling out a cigarette lighter. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't seen it in the chaos of the moment, but there it was. Carol had intentionally set my dress on fire. That was all the proof I needed. I couldn't believe it at first. How could she do this? Why would she do this? But then the more I thought about it, the more I understood. She wasn't just jealous of me. She was afraid of losing her grip on Lucas. She was willing to do anything to keep him under her control, even if it meant ruining our lives. With the video as evidence, I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with this. I called the police. I didn't want to escalate things, but at that point, I had no choice. I wasn't going to let her get away with destroying the most important day of my life, putting my safety at risk, and manipulating Lucas for so long. The police took the matter seriously, and an investigation was launched. It didn't take long for them to gather enough evidence to arrest Carol. I was in shock when I got the call. Carol, the woman who had tried to destroy my happiness, was now facing multiple charges. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I knew she was finally going to face consequences for her actions. Anger because of everything she had done to me and Lucas. Lucas was furious when he found out about the arrest. He called me, shouting and accusing me of ruining his family. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had tried to be patient, tried to make things work, but I had given him every chance to stand up for me, and he hadn't. He was just as complicit in her behavior as she was. "I can't believe you do this to me," Lucas said, his voice trembling with rage. "She's my mother, Jennifer. She's the only family I have left." "Well, I was your family too," I said, my voice steady but firm. "But I wasn't good enough for you, was I? You chose her over me, and you always will." There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear his breathing, ragged and heavy. Finally, he spoke again. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "I'm done, Lucas. I can't live like this anymore." And with that, I hung up. I knew it was over. My marriage was over, but now I felt free. Free from Carol, free from Lucas, free from all the manipulation and control. The police eventually charged Carol with multiple offenses, including endangering my safety. She was arrested and sentenced to a long prison term. When I found out, I felt a strange sense of justice. I had taken action, fought back, and won. But the real victory was that I'd reclaimed my life. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even family, dictate my happiness ever again. After everything that had happened, I finally felt like I could breathe again. The chaos, the heartbreak, the fire, it was all behind me. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace settle in my heart. But I knew the hardest part was yet to come. Moving on from Lucas and Carol was only the beginning. Now I had to rebuild my life. I spent the first few weeks just focusing on myself. I couldn't remember the last time I had done that. My life had always been centered around others. Lucas, his family, trying to keep the peace. But now I was free to live for me. I started picking up the pieces one by one. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't seen in ages. Spent time with my family, and for the first time in a long time, I truly enjoyed being alone. But the moment I felt truly empowered was when I looked at the person I had become. I had been through hell and back, and yet here I was, standing strong. I had fought for myself and won. That was a power I had never known. Then, just when I thought the story was over, something unexpected happened. It had been a few months since Carol was arrested, and Lucas and I hadn't spoken since that last phone call. I thought he would be angry, maybe even try to reach out, but he hadn't. Then one afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat when I saw that it was Lucas. I hesitated before answering. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this conversation. Jennifer, Lucas's voice was soft, tired. I've been thinking about everything, and I know you're probably never going to forgive me, but I need to apologize. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I was blind to what my mother was doing. I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. My heart was torn. Part of me wanted to scream at him for everything he had put me through, but another part of me just wanted closure. Lucas, I'm not sure I can forgive you, I murmured, my voice steady but charged with emotion. You missed your opportunity. Every single time, you sided with your mom instead of me, and I will not stand for it any longer. That was then. A lengthy hush fell over the room. On the other end, I could make out what sounded like Lucas's labored breathing as he searched for the correct words. I get it, he whispered softly. Please understand that I have evolved. My mistake is now crystal clear. Please accept my deepest apologies. Feeling the burden of his apologies, I closed my eyes. However, I sensed in my heart that it was inadequate. I had become stronger as a result of his failure to support me during my most vulnerable moments. I finally forced myself to say, "Goodbye, Lucas," and my voice was crystal clear. Take care of yourself. It ended there. There was no more room for that period of my life. I had broken away from a life that had been limiting me, from a family that had rejected me, and from the guy I had planned to marry. I lived my life, flaws and all. Once again, I would not submit to anyone's control. That included Carol, who, despite her manipulative nature, had always failed to appreciate the strength of an independent woman. I kept my eye on the prize of personal fulfillment as the years went by. I dove headfirst into my work, into discovering who I was and what made me happy, and into achieving inner peace. I had realized the value of asserting my independence and refusing to be defined by the jealousy or control of others. Then I discovered I was expecting a child a year down the road. I was caught unawares by the news, yet it brought an unprecedented delight to my life. It was my intention to have a family. I was determined to bring my child up in an environment where joy, kindness, and love were paramount. When I told my parents, I'll never forget it. I could see the joy and pride radiating from my mom's face as she received the news. Now that she realized how far I had gone, she understood all that I had gone through. My life was back in my hands. I knew I had made the correct decision as I sat there with my family and the man who had become my life partner, someone who valued me and accepted me just as I was. Though it would never truly leave me, my past no longer defined who I am. Suddenly, I had liberation. My struggle had been successful, and I was now enjoying the life of my dreams.